Thanks for joining me today. I had the opportunity to interview Sarah Eder earlier. She's very interesting. She actually has a marketing background and she does very well on social media. She's very consistent in posting everything about her business, which is basically to raise capital for real estate. She manages the renovations and she partners with people who have some capital in order to basically buy, fix, rent, and refinance properties, the BRRRR strategy. So she was breaking down her process and how she went from having 0 properties last year. I met with her for coffee and she told me she didn't have anything at the time to now having over 30 doors for herself, 32 doors in 1 year. She's raised over $3 million and it's fascinating to see that because to think in 1 year you're able to raise $3 million for a bunch of transactions, like the sky's the limit for her. There's a lot of good things in this interview. I think you will find great value in it, so I hope you'll enjoy. And just a reminder, if you guys know people who are looking to invest, I'm always happy to help. A lot of opportunities in Hamilton, Brantford, St. Catharines, and those types of areas. So I'd love to help your friends and family get into some sort of investment. So reach out to me. You can email me, george@welloff.ca. Check out my website, welloff.ca. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes or on YouTube if you're on there, and share it with your friends and family. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Welloff Podcast, where the goal is to motivate, inspire, and share success principles. And I am here with Sarah Eder, an entrepreneur from the age of 19. She started off managing properties, over 150 doors. And at this time, she actually focuses on building a portfolio of properties with partners. She actually quit her job last year and focused all of her energy on just what I just mentioned to you. And she's actually been able to acquire 32 doors in less than 1 year without using any of her own money. So Sarah, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. So I'm excited to speak to you today. I'd like to ask you the standard question that I always start with, which is tell me about your childhood, what that was like, and certain things that you remember from those days.
Absolutely. So yeah, I had a really good childhood. I actually grew up in Sault Ste. Marie, which a lot of people don't know about because they assume I'm just a native GTAer. But yeah, so I grew up like really rural, like small town, just really normal kind of upbringing. And it wasn't until later in my life that I realized, my parents were actually very entrepreneurial, and so was my grandmother. She's very close to me, and she immigrated from Denmark after the war. And she had her own antique shop. She was a seamstress for a really long time. All of us as teenagers, that was like our first job, was like working. We were sweeping floors and answering phones in the antique shop. And yeah, I realized like that she gave me a lot of really good business savvy skills growing up, and really gave me that motivation to want to just work for myself eventually. And yeah, other than that, it was pretty fun. I mean, I left when I was about 19, way too small town for me. And I remember telling my parents that when I was a little kid, like, Mom and Dad, I can't wait till I'm old enough. I can't wait to get out of here. And yeah, 19 came, and I was gone, and I haven't really looked back since. So,
Very cool. Where do you live now, by the way?
in Guelph.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I think you've been there for a while. Um,
Yeah.
at what point? Because I know you used to, or you still ride horses. I forget what that sport is
Yeah.
called. How do you,
Equestrian.
yeah,
Yeah.
equestrian. That's the one. So do you still do that?
Very recreationally.
Okay.
A few months ago was the first time I'd actually sat on a horse in over a year, the
Mhm.
longest time in my life since I was 12.
Really?
So I want to get back into it more as a hobby, but yeah, I mean, that was my life for almost 15 years. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Okay, so you live in Guelph. You grew up with an entrepreneurial grandmother, which is really cool, by the way.
Yeah.
And how? At what point did you? Why did you choose to go to Guelph of all places? Is that where you went when you were 19?
No, I bounced around a lot.
Hmm.
So I used to travel down every summer to try to qualify for nationals while I was like a professional athlete. So I lived in more like rural areas. Like I was in like Erin and Milton, King City, Aurora kind of areas. And then I actually moved to Europe and the States for a couple of years. Then when I moved back to Canada, I was in Milton for a really long time because I had my farm close to there. And then I only moved to Guelph because of my partner going to grad school at
Hmm.
U of G. So we're just there. We're actually moving back to Mississauga in
Okay.
December. So
Yeah, that's kind of a funny thing because I kind of know you because of the whole real estate thing, but I actually know your partner because we
Yeah.
went to high school together.
It's such a small world. I
Yeah,
remember meeting you for the first time at
yeah,
his birthday party.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying that, yeah, my girlfriend, she does some real estate stuff here and there, and
Yeah.
now come to think of it, like you're doing some pretty big things. So that's
Yeah.
really cool. Um, can you talk about, so we kind of touched on in the introduction on what you're doing now, and for those that don't know, you're very active like on social media, you're active in raising capital for your deals. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my background when I went to university was actually in marketing and advertising. And so, I've always loved social media. I've had little, businesses my whole life essentially. Obviously, I have my own horse farm after I had stopped pursuing like my Olympic dream. I kind of came back to Canada. And ran everything. So I built my own website. I learned how to advertise myself. I used Kijiji to, solicit like students and coaching clients. So I've always really loved that. So when I started to get into real estate, number one, I had gotten myself into a lot of debt. For those of you that don't know, equestrian is a ridiculous sport. It does not make money. That's why I left it. It's a passion of the heart, not the pocket. And I got into a lot of debt and I, racked up some credit card bills and I wanted to invest and then thought, okay, well, this isn't going to go too well. I don't own a house. I have really bad credit. What am I going to do? So I was actually mentored and taught about this whole concept of joint ventures, which I'm really grateful for. And then kind of just took my own millennial twist on it. Took all that, marketing and business building skills that I had like kind of developed over my life and applied it to my real estate. So yeah.
So a year ago, I sat down with you. We had coffee, and you were telling me that you were still pretty new to this. You were starting to raise a little bit of money. You had some coaching clients of yours and whatnot, but you had zero properties.
Yeah.
And then now I speak to you, and you say you have 32 doors, and
Yeah.
that's in less than 1 year. Can you talk to me about that journey and how you got to where you are today?
Absolutely. So when I first got started, I mean, I think for any new investor, especially being young, like I was like 29 and I look very young and it was tough to convince people to invest with me and I didn't really know what I was doing. And so I managed to acquire a couple of properties, but we sold them fairly quickly. I did a couple of flips. And then, I really wanted to take this seriously. I had managed 150 doors of multifamily. I felt like I was so experienced, really confident with that kind of thing, like analyzing properties, managing tenants. And I was like, I want to have like a serious portfolio. So by the end of last year, we were seriously starting to consider, what my next steps needed to be because I felt like my corporate job was really getting in the way. Every time I need to see a property, well, I can't take time off work during the day. I was missing out on opportunities. So I said, you know what? Like, I'm an entrepreneur by heart. I'm not afraid of it. Let's do this. So I quit my job last December and just dove in head first. I, started up my social media in earnest. I was really active, speaking, trying to get writing gigs and news, like magazines and things like that, and really just pushed hard. And, I made it my job that like every week I was out seeing off market properties. I was going to open houses, going to as many networking events as I could. And everyone always asks me, well, what's the magic secret? It's consistency. At the end of the day, I just did it all the time, every day. And I think that's a big component of my success.
Right. Can you tell me a bit? Can you provide some details on how you were able to convince people? Because you kind of touched on it, like somebody who didn't really have properties, and maybe people looked at you and thought, like, why should I invest with you? How were you able to get past that and to get or sorry, work with different people and actually raise money, a lot of money? How much did we say you raised?
Probably close to
About
3
three
million.
million. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how were you able to do that? In
Um,
detail, I mean,
yeah, no,
if you can share that, not all
absolutely.
details, but some details.
Yeah, I mean, I like to be honest about this because I feel like there's a lot of generic info
Hmm.
online that's like, oh, just write a couple blog posts or, go to some networking
Yeah.
events. You'll meet someone who's like minded. That's not good enough. And that's
Hmm.
why I started coaching because I was like, I wish I had that back then, like someone to hold my hand. I had to kind of like just figure it out on my own.
Hmm.
And I will say that like a huge component was that I had experience. It might not have been necessarily me owning properties,
Hmm.
but managing that portfolio. Because I mean, like, I was in the field all the time. I went to home inspections. I've even been to landlord tenant board, evicting tenants before. Like, so if someone were to come to me and say, well, Sarah, if we bought this fourplex together, could you manage it? 100%. Can you evaluate it? Do you know how to like maintain the building? 100%. So that was definitely a big upsell, I think, in the eyes of my potential investors. Also, that was like really enthusiastic. I was like, I don't care. Like, I'll look at properties all day long. I'll stay up late. I'll do whatever it takes to do it. And I think they really just, took a chance on the fact that I also was just ambitious and really willing to go to bat for them, essentially. But I mean, for those of you that don't have a portfolio starting out, it's a good idea to like work for a real estate brokerage, work for a property management company, get some like real life experience, get paid to do it. Of course, I mean, that's the ideal situation. Have something under your belt, that you can say, hey, like I've done this to an extent. Take that extra leap for me.
Right. Okay, so how did you find JV partners in the sense, like, how did you know that this person had some money that they wanted to invest before you approached them?
I like to work from a different type of model, and this is probably the millennial in me. Is I believe in that concept that if you build something of value, they will come. And so I was like, okay, instead of me like chasing joint venture partners, because to your point, I mean, it's hard to tell. Like, I don't know if they have an RSP. I don't know if they're, going to be financially capable. So let me build blogs. Let me build a YouTube video. Let me talk about my values, show the world kind of who I am and what I do, and then let them kind of like reach out to me. And that's still a model I use today. And it's pretty successful that way. Like, I'm not running around trying to have conversations with people that aren't interested. It's people that genuinely like me and like what I do. So
Have you heard of Magnetic Marketing by Dan Kennedy?
yeah,
Oh, you have?
yeah, I have
Cool.
actually.
So you were applying those principles from the book, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
essentially.
So those that don't know, the main principle in the book is like, don't chase after people, but do things that will attract them to you, which is exactly what you're talking about. So by putting out these blogs and by being active on social media, people saw, okay, this looks like it's somebody that I may want to invest with, and I'm willing to trust her and give her some money to work with and make it happen. So really cool.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. So let's say now this person raises their hand and says, I'm interested, Sarah. I'm looking to invest. I don't want to do it myself. I might want a partner. What happens from there?
Essentially, I think part of like why I'm successful and now I get a lot of good word of mouth referrals is because I really take the time to get to know my investor. Some people might be like, all right, let's go, buy a property today. I want to make sure that these are long-term relationships. So I spend a lot of time, especially if they're first timers and they're like, oh, I want to go do, a very specific type of investing. I'm like, okay, why? And if it's a good reason, it's a good reason, but sometimes it's like they might have just read an article or heard a podcast and they just think that's like the new cool thing to do. I want to know like what's your financial situation? What are your retirement goals? Do you want to quit your job? Do you want to have like an early retirement? How many properties are you looking? And so I kind of act like, broker, banker, realtor, like all in one. And it's almost like a kind of like a consulting session. Spend some time, really, really getting to know them before then kind of taking the next steps. I send them to my mortgage broker, making sure, they're pre-approved the way they need to be set up. A lot of people just go to their average bank. I make sure they go see a good broker because sometimes they're like, oh, I think I can only qualify for like 350. And I'm like, okay, let's get you with someone qualified and let's see what the real situation is. Yeah, and then we just go. I go shop for properties. Yeah.
Okay. How involved do you want your partners to be? Like you personally, do you want them to kind of just sit on the sidelines? I'll take care of everything, all the active part, and you just maybe I'll give you quarterly reports, things like that.
That's an awesome question. I get that so much. There's a lot of people, like colleagues of mine, that are also joint venture partners that say, they like completely hands off type of investors. And I get that. Like, I mean, it's nice to have someone that just writes a check, signs their name on a property, and they walk away. I mean, that's ideal. That's awesome. But I have a lot of millennial, like first timers. And because I coach, a lot of people go to me and they say, Sarah, will you teach me? Is that okay? Is that allowed? Like, will you show me the ropes? And can I come to the construction? Can I kind of like see what's going on? Because oftentimes, we're doing large multis, we're doing conversions, like pretty big construction projects, and they really want to like set themselves up for success. Now, a lot of JVs would say, not a chance, because they don't want to like give away their secret formula. They want to be the hook that keeps these JVs investing with them for life, always like educated, but not enough. My situation is I'm like, you know what? It doesn't matter. Like, education is education. If these people want to learn, awesome. What I'm doing isn't like some magical formula. It's like a renovation. It's buying a house. So I'm more than happy to have my JVs be involved. I still make it clear that like, I run the show. Like, this is how we're gonna do the renos. They need to trust my like expertise and authority when it comes to tenanting and things like that. But if they want to come and hang out and learn how it goes, I'm totally cool with that too. So
Cool. Just to kind of talk about a little bit more, dive a little deeper into this. So, do you, before you go out and look for a property, do you go through, for example, opening like a joint bank account and having a promissory note or some sort of letter of intent that they will actually work with you and provide the funds and whatnot? Because you don't want to get into a situation where you go firm on a deal and then your JV partner backs out.
yeah, that's a fantastic point. Typically, I don't go so far as like a joint bank account per se. Usually we do that like after we've acquired the property. But definitely the letter of intent. I think it's just a nice fenced boundary for everyone. Plus, like my letter of intent also tends to outline like who brings what to the table, like renovation costs, down payment, what's our split of cash flow, when do they intend on exiting the property, what is their like refinancing expectation? Is it right away? Is it 2 years? I think those are really important conversations to have before you start buying properties, to your point, because sometimes it's like you could go firm, show them a property, and then they're like, well, wait, like I want to refinance right away. Well, you didn't have that conversation. So that's a really good opportunity to really have those like deep conversations about what they want and their expectations. So
Yeah. So is all of that in your letter of intent or is it in your JV agreement?
that's actually all in my letter of intent. It's not super comprehensive. It's just a one-page summary, but it hits all the high notes, like who brings the down payment, who's covering the financing, cash flow, refinance, and I think desired kind of like exit strategy, all on a page. We both sign it, and then the JV will obviously go a little deeper into that. So
Got it.
yeah,
How long is your JV agreement? Is it like 30 pages?
yeah, it's like
Okay.
35 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so what kind of properties are you going after today? We were kind of touching on this a little bit, but if you want to share.
Yeah, of course. So I'm super creative. Like I always feel like I don't want to be buying the types of properties everyone else is. And I actually think that's again part of like why I'm successful, because I really like to think outside the box.
Yeah, everyone's right now, everyone that we kind of know, our mutual friends and whatnot, the hot thing right now is legal second suite conversions on the
Yeah,
Hamilton Mountain. So, yeah, a lot
exactly.
of people are doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it totally like appeals to me, right? Like I've always done conversions, multis, stuff like that. So obviously that's super important. The thing that like I'm a numbers person. Like I took finance in university, and I like run the numbers on some of these duplex conversions. I was like, I don't like this. Like I don't think my JVs are gonna like this. They're leaving too much capital in the property. The construction costs are actually pretty high for like what it is. So I was like, what can we do to, provide better value to my investors? And so we started looking at 2.5 stories rather than just bungalows. So now we're doing, triplex, fourplex conversions, different Airbnb models, and also just like remodeling existing large multis, whether they need to be legalized or not. Just if they're in, good areas but really run down, we work on, getting out the tenants, renovating, or again, like just finding something that hasn't been retrofitted, going through the building, and then going through the legal process. So yeah, we're doing a little more creative stuff, but my investors are really liking it. So
So typically, it's pretty safe to say that if you're doing a legal second suite on the Hamilton Mountain, it would probably cost from just different people and whatnot, $80,000 to $100,000 for the construction and the permits and all of that. So for one of your projects, let's say you're converting to a triplex or a fourplex, what numbers are you typically seeing to get it to be a legal version of that property?
yeah, I mean, like I would say we're not spending more than 200, but you're probably hitting that like 150 mark, like on average. Definitely way more expensive to convert like a 2.5 story than a bungalow. But for me, the value is that we're getting them so much cheaper than on Hamilton Mountain. And then plus our refi is so much higher because, I mean, as you continue to add suites or, units, I mean, the appraisal just continues to, skyrocket. So we're actually fully able to pull out all of our renovation capital plus some. And I know that's getting harder and harder on the mountain now with those duplexes. And you're only looking at 2 units, which makes it tough. So
Right. Yeah. That's a good point actually about the refinance, because a lot of people struggle to get full value for their duplexes because appraisers are, like, I've had many conversations with other people, but appraisers are comparing those legal duplexes to illegal ones,
yes.
and they're not able to get the maximum value of their property. Whereas if you're doing a triplex or a fourplex, that's a different story. You're probably able to get really close to what market value is on the appraisal.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're not having any issues whatsoever. Even on a couple ones we've done that are retrofitted suites, they're still treating them like full units. And especially like we'll use Hamilton for an example. They're really encouraging densification, right? So if we're going to the city saying, hey, like work with us, we want to get this, duplex with like a retrofitted third. We have, half the parking. Can we work it out? The city's actually been pretty cool. And like I said, and the appraisers are really favoring that. So.
Okay. So can you kind of give us an example of some of the numbers, and also maybe touch on how you're able to find some of these good deals? Because I've seen you post about some of your deals, and they seem pretty damn good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's part of my job as like a joint venture expert. In fact, like I think it is my like sole job aside from managing the construction, the tenants, which isn't that difficult. It's finding the deals. So I take it really seriously. I have a whole team now that helps me, and not just like realtors and wholesalers, but my own personal team that I just started working with maybe like 6 months ago, doing it almost full time. We do everything from flyer distribution to bandit signs, Kijiji ads, online advertising, and just really like networking with lots of people in different markets, whether, like I said, they are mortgage brokers or realtors, just people that have pocket listings, just developing relationships. And the more I build a reputation for having, capital and serious partners, obviously the more people are willing to send me good opportunities. So,
So what would be the most effective technique that you've used to generate these opportunities? Because I know you've done a bit of Kijiji ads, or yeah, whatever, Kijiji ads. You're talking about networking. I don't know if flyers and whatnot. What's been the most effective for you?
for me personally, actually my flyer distribution, again, my marketing background, I'm pretty savvy when it comes to setting up, budgets, targeting, things like that. So we do, I want to say maybe like 3,000 postcards a month for distribution. I have guys out there trying to set up appointments for me, or obviously soliciting and targeting multifamily. We have a way of, talking to tenants and trying to, get in touch with like the landlords of these buildings. So, I mean, that gives me control, right? It's like I like to work direct to seller if I can. And it just opens up opportunities that would never come on MLS otherwise. So,
Okay,
yeah.
very cool. Um, Without giving away all your secrets, can you kind of tell us a little bit of what your flyer, um, or kind of how it's set up? Is it like a traditional flyer with print text and photos, or is it some people are doing handwritten flyers?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't mind sharing. I won't tell you my exact
Yeah, yeah.
text on it, but I've found, honestly, from all my market research, the more personal you are, the better. For the most part, I think people that are wanting to sell privately are doing so for a reason. If they wanted to contact a realtor with like a flashy brochure, they would. And I think they trust me because I identify myself as just a local investor. It's a very personalized, like I do a handwritten and a printed, but even the printed one is like the same similar text. It's all very casual. And I think that just like people are less like intimidated and threatened. They're just like, oh, okay, she's a girl that, is just looking to buy some properties. Oh, I don't have to pay commission. I'll give her a call and see what's up. Otherwise, like I think if you go too formal, they just don't want to talk to these corporate people. Like I said, otherwise they would just call a realtor. So
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because everybody gets bombarded with real estate stuff.
exactly.
Everybody's mailbox, even mine. Like I live in Hamilton, I get stuff all the time in my mailbox, and I couldn't care less about it. Right?
You just chuck them in the blue box.
Exactly. I don't even bring them home. I just, on my way in the house, I just throw them out. All right. So I think a lot of people do that, but Okay, that's interesting. What's your vision right now? What are you aiming to do? Like, have you set certain goals, or do you have something in mind that you'd like to achieve?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I would say the more I'm doing like these larger multis, I really think that is the future. Honestly, the more I'm converting like single families, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of maintenance. So I want to start to get more and more into commercial. So we did. I partnered with people to buy a 14 unit in Hamilton, and we're actively campaigning looking for 15 unit plus. So
Hmm.
that's really exciting to me. I've always wanted to do apartment buildings. I have a couple partners that also are looking into like plazas, more like commercial mix use. It's something I've always been really, really passionate about. And even just from like a logistical standpoint, I'm doing so many deals a year now, and I only see that increasing. I would love eventually to, maybe only have to do like two or three large deals per year rather than 50 houses. It's a lot of maintenance, it's a
Hmm.
lot of construction projects. Like I think I was telling you, like I have 7 properties closing
Hmm.
like in the next couple of months, and all of them are $100,000 rentals or more. That's a ton of work,
Hmm.
versus if I did one large development or one large commercial, still a lot of money, still a lot of work. But once it's done, now I have 20 units under one roof or a plaza, and I just have to do another, you know, for the year to kind of reach my quota. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Have you thought about how you're going to be able to manage all of your 7 ongoing projects in the next couple weeks, I guess?
Yeah, that's definitely something what's great to talk about with like the audience too, right? Is like as you grow as an investor, like everyone has to remember like this is a business. It's great to just like buy a few houses here and there, but you have to treat it like a business. And so eventually, probably by next year, I'm actually going to be hiring a few staff. So I already am hiring an administrative assistant to help with more of like the day-to-day management of my business itself. And then eventually, I do want to have kind of like an acquisitions manager who's also kind of in charge of staying on top, like doing site visits to the construction projects and
Hmm.
things like that. So that's for now, it'll just be me. I mean, I'm very grateful. I use general contractors that I trust. So these guys are very hands on, they are investors themselves. So I get to be a little less hands on with those. I trust them. But yeah, definitely moving forward in the future, I need some full time help.
Yeah, very cool. All right, I want to ask you about your coaching. Can you kind of describe how you help people, what your coaching system kind of looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely something like a side thing for me that I turn to be very passionate about. And I think it's because, as you guys know now, I started off with not a lot of anything. And I found it really frustrating, the information that I found online. I took every seminar, read every single book, and it helped. But had I not had a marketing background or like a sales background, I would have been like, it would have taken me much longer to get to where I am. So my whole goal for my coaching is that I don't ever want to become like a massive group. I want to keep it small, I keep it individualized, and I focus on teaching people how to raise capital, how to grow their portfolio as a business, and in practical steps. So
Hmm.
everything like I just kind of talked about on this podcast, like I'm open about it. I don't hold back secrets or try to, teach people a washed out way of doing
Hmm.
things. I teach them my methods. I give them my flyers. I give them my models, my spreadsheets. I don't hold anything back. I really want people to succeed. So I try to, you know, teach them exactly how to like implement my model. So
Got it. And since we're talking about this, can you maybe share 3 tips on raising capital, things that just come to mind?
yeah, sure. I would say this is probably one you've maybe heard before, but I think it cannot get said enough that the people need to like your joint venture partners. You can bring them all the great deals in the world. I just talked to a joint venture partner today actually that wants to work with me, and he said on the phone, he's like, you know what? He's like, you're so honest, you're so genuine. I would do like 10 deals with you. He doesn't know what those deals are, but he likes me. Like
Hmm.
he gets it. He just likes my personality and the way I do business. So that's so important, especially when you're first getting started. Don't focus on the numbers, focus on your brand, getting people to genuinely get you and like you. um, I would also say, get familiar with all of the aspects. Just because you're going to send them to a mortgage broker and a lawyer, they're going to ask you a million questions about financing, about closing, about, you know, like everything that can go on with a property. You better have some answers, because I can tell you, like, I've learned more about what mortgage brokers do, what my lawyers do behind the scenes, about everything, because I'm really hands on in the process. And when something goes wrong, they don't call the broker, they call me first. So you really become kind of like a fire putter outer. So you really do need to know what goes on, even if you're not going to be the professional doing it. Um, and lastly, I would say don't wait to raise capital. So many people say, well, I don't know if I want to like work with partners. I already have a good job. I already have, you know, money. But I'm telling you, every single person I've ever talked to that has like 4 properties gets bitten by the bug. Then they want like 10, they want 15, they want 20, and you're not going to do it on your own. It's very, very difficult. So I think, you know, start raising capital now, start, you know, getting your feet wet, because you're probably going to need capital at least, it's probably sooner rather than later. So
Okay, so to recap your 3 tips: one, make sure people like you, build relationships, be honest. What was number 2 again?
it was
Know the process.
process.
Understand
Yeah.
the terminology, understand how things work. And number 3 was
Oh, no, I'm gonna forget. This is
I totally forgot too. Anyways, well, you guys just have to rewind it and listen. All
too
right.
many good tips.
Oh, don't wait to raise capital.
Yeah,
Start raising right away.
do it now.
That
Yeah.
was excellent. We'll make sure we'll edit that part out. Okay, so can you tell us something that you can think of to help people who are maybe just starting to raise capital and maybe they're stuck? They're stuck with that first one. They just can't get over that hump, or for whatever reason, they have the knowledge. They have all the things that you're discussing, but they're just not able to get somebody to sign and say, "Okay, I trust you. Let's move forward." So maybe a couple tips on that, or maybe just one tip on that. Something that can really help them get move forward.
Yeah, no, that's an awesome question. I would say in today's market, at least, the best advice I could give is try to go out and find a good deal. It didn't always used to be like this for raising capital, at least from my original mentors that helped me. There was like a ton of properties and interest rates were really low, and it was more trying to just like build that rapport with people. Nowadays, I feel like almost anyone will do a joint venture with you if it's a great deal.
So if you have it, you mean you have a contract signed?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Like an offer in on like a good property. And I've actually encouraged some of like my students to go about it that way, because I mean, everyone knows like the market's so tight right now and there's so much competition that if you have one golden deal, that can be all it takes to just get like a flood of people interested, and then, you know, someone's going to snap up that deal, but there's still people in the wings waiting. So it gives you like that motivation and incentive to just keep finding like deals.
Okay, so let's say somebody finds that deal. Would it make sense for them to reach out to someone like you and say, "Hey, look, I've got this deal. Do you happen to know anyone who's interested?" Or is that not something that you would possibly do? Or like, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I love being creative, right? So believe it or not, I've actually am doing a deal like that right now. It was someone who found an amazing deal. They were like, I don't know how to set up a JV. I don't think I can find a mortgage holder for this. What can we do? And so he and I actually ended up kind of like, we're going to be co-management partners, and then we're going to find, or I did find actually already, a 50% JV on the other side for the
Cool.
money partner. So if someone's willing to, you know, maybe give up a bit of the deal or whatever, I can definitely help them get through that first hump. So
Awesome. There you go. So there's some different options. I think really like once you kind of open that door, you just like for example when I started selling real estate, like that first house that I sold, it took a while to get there.
yeah,
But then you realize it's not really that complicated. It's
yeah,
once you have the system in place, it's you could do it over and over. So
yep.
yeah, that was a good tip. Okay, so let's jump into the next section, which is the random 5.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you 5 random questions, and you can just kind of tell me the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
Can you describe your morning routine?
Oh, okay. I'm a early morning person. So, and I really like to meditate. So, I'm like a really scattered, like high strung person. So my morning routine is like I get up, I meditate. I usually have like a cup of tea, and then like dive right into social media. That's actually the first thing I do in the morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're posting on social media, or are you
Yeah.
like just scrolling?
A bit of both. I
Okay.
check on all my groups, but mostly it's posting for social for the day. As you know, it's such a huge component of my
Yeah.
my business, so I make sure to try to do that before the day gets too crazy. Yeah.
Cool. Who do you look up to?
Oh, wow. That's good. Oh, that's like so hard because there's so many like personal people in my life. I think just because like I don't want to get like so personal, but my grandmother just passed away, so I have to say like she's been on my mind a lot, and I think like of anyone like in my life, I looked up to her so much. Just not only because she gave me like my entrepreneurial spirit, but just knowing what she did for my family, like how brave she was to like immigrate. She wasn't married at the time, like she just like got on a boat when she was like 20 and just like immigrated to Canada by herself, and it just like knowing like what she went through to give us like this amazing life and how strong she was, like she's so inspirational to me.
Well, sorry for your loss,
Thank you.
and I'm sure you're honoring her with everything that you're doing, and I'm sure she's happy to see you succeed and to be the entrepreneur that you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mom showed her my article in that Canadian Wealth magazine. Apparently she stuck it up on her wall in
Oh,
her
cool.
home, so
That's awesome. Okay, what's your favorite breakfast if you have breakfast?
I actually don't eat breakfast.
Okay.
I usually like intermittently fast, but it's also because I'm allergic to eggs and it's really sad. So like don't find like breakfast food to be that exciting. That's not like a donut or like a muffin. But I think my favorite breakfast is definitely pancakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when's your first meal usually?
Usually like around noon.
Okay. I
Yeah.
do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate eating breakfast. It's the worst. Like I wake up and I'm like, I don't really feel like
Really?
it. Yeah.
I love eating breakfast, but I just do it because I know there's so many benefits to
Yeah.
intermittent fasting.
Exactly.
Okay, what's your most fulfilling and largest goal?
Wow, that's a good one. Actually, this is sort of real estate related, but kind of not. So, as you know, like my partner is a therapist, and part of like my whole thing about like getting successful in real estate isn't just to like own, like 200 properties or a bunch of buildings. It's to get to the point that like we're so financially okay that now we can like better the world around us and be comfortable. Because I think that's like a point you need to kind of be at. And we really want to open kind of like shelters, like almost like group homes for at-risk youth and teens, especially. So it's like a huge goal for me. As an aside too, from like real estate, I'm going to talk about so many like depressing things on this. So my dad unfortunately passed away from cancer a year ago, and it's always been so he had to do a huge stint at Princess Margaret. And it was so expensive for my mom to fly in from like Sault Ste. Marie, and they were staying. And there's not a lot of like, there's like the Ronald McDonald House for kids, but for adults, there's really not a lot of options. And it is my goal someday with my real estate connections to provide some sort of like sponsorship or like affordable housing for patients staying at Princess Margaret and their families.
Cool. Yeah, I really like those goals. I think those are a lot of people, when you ask, they don't really know what they want to do, but it's cool to have something that's separate from real estate and something big.
Yeah, and I feel like I can use my real estate connections to help people in that way. Like I want to turn, the idea of us as real estate investors as being these like greedy, money hungry people and like do something philanthropic with it, because eventually it's like how many doors am I going to own? Is it 500? Is it 1,000? When is it going to be enough?
Yeah.
I want to take that and actually do good.
Yeah,
So.
I've heard that a couple times. Like just recently, I interviewed a very successful real estate agent who's been top 10 in Canada for years and years.
Wow.
And he asked the same thing. He was talking to like the number one agent in the country, and he's like, "When's enough enough?" And she didn't know how to answer,
Yeah.
so he just thought, "Yeah, I don't know what to say about that."
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, and the last question is, what success principle do you live by?
Oh wow. I would say, having been an entrepreneur my whole life, it is that no matter how much things can look wrong and you're doubting yourself, it's to continue to push forward no matter what. If I had stopped when I was like, I don't know how to buy my first property, like, I don't know what I'm going to do, I would never be where I am. And even along this road, like, I've made so many mistakes. There are times when I was like looking at my bank account or looking at what I was doing, thinking, like I'm insane. This is insane. I cannot do this. And I just I just had that vision in my head, and I was like, no, this is for my family. This is for my future. I will not give up, even if it's not working today. Someday it's going to work. I know it is, and I just never gave up.
That's awesome. That's a great way to think, and that's a strong mindset as well, which is something that keeps coming up for me. Like I'm even reading a book right now called Success of the Millionaire Mind.
Oh, I've heard of it.
Yeah. So just trying to really focus on mindset and Exactly. Just making sure that I'm always getting better and always thinking positively and whatnot. So great to hear that from you. Before we end things, is there anything you'd like to share? And also, do you want to tell people how they can connect with you?
Yeah, awesome. I mean, I think I always love to leave people with a little bit of like an inspirational note. I think because of my story, I always tell people like don't give up just because you think real estate isn't ever going to happen for you. You might not own a lot of properties. Don't limit yourself to investing the way people tell you to invest. Like if I had listened to people like in the beginning that told me like 50-50 joint ventures, like no one's going to do that with you. Like why would you even try that? I had a lot of friends and family tell me that, and I was like, nope, I'm not going to listen to you. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen people do it. I'm going to do it. Take my story like as one of those. Say, listen, like I know someone that's doing it. I'm not crazy. I'm going to try my best.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can invest. And if you guys want to reach out to me, my website is just my name. So it's saraheder.com, or you can follow me on Instagram at sarahederinvest.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. There was some good stuff in here,
Yeah, it was
and I
great.
look forward to seeing you around.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.